As he taught, Jesus said, "Watch out for the teachers of the law. They like to walk around in flowing robes and be greeted with respect in the marketplaces, and have the most important seats in the synagogues and the places of honor at banquets. They devour widows' houses, and for a show make lengthy prayers. These men will be punished most severely." Jesus sat down opposite the place where the offerings were put and watched the crowd putting their money into the temple treasury. Many rich people threw in large amounts, but a poor widow came and put in 2 very small copper coins, worth only a few pence. Calling his disciples to him, Jesus said, "Truly I tell you, this poor widow has put more into the treasury than all the others. They all gave out of their wealth, but she, out of her poverty, put in everything, all she had to live on."
Mark chapter 12, verses 38 to 40. I'm standing in what 200 years ago would have been the very heart of Bognor. In 1821, a market was built just about here. It was slate roofed, it was open on all 4 sides, it had 12 stone colonnades that supported the roof. In 1822, an Act of Parliament allowed for the regeneration of Bognor Regis and the setting up of a commission. It was like a council of 16 worthy local people. That included the Earl of Arran, Thomas Hardwick, the brewer, who still has a pub named after him. He was later to be buried in our churchyard at South Bersted. One of the things that the commissioners were allowed to do was to set up a market. Now that was quite controversial at the time because the local shopkeepers were worried that the market would undercut them. To be honest with you, it wasn't terribly successful by all accounts, and the commissioners did much better at making money from charging a levy on all of the coal that was landed on the beach that had come on boats around from the northeast of England and was unloaded as it then was taken from here elsewhere. So what now is called Market Street is really just the backs of the properties from the Steyne and Waterloo Square. But there was also the St John's Church that was just here as well. And my predecessor at South Bersted in the early 1820s did a church plant just here. They called it St John's. So where it says now Chapel Street, that was nothing to do with St John's because that was a church. Chapel Street referred to another place altogether, a chapel. And the St John's Church plant served this locality until later on in that century when it was decided that it actually was too small and needed to be rebuilt on a much bigger scale and premises on the site that is now where Boots the chemist is. So it was just here at the top of the Steyne that St John's Church was, and the market. They would sell meat and fish and vegetables and household items. What I don't know is how people would have been greeted in the market, whether they would have had particular greetings for those commissioners. I'd imagine that they were treated with huge amounts of respect. When I went to school in the early 80s, I went to a pretty ordinary comprehensive school, and it had once been a grammar school, and the head teacher was very much clinging on to those old grammar school traditions, so that if the head teacher walked into the classroom, you stopped what you were doing, you stood up behind your desk, you were completely quiet, awaiting further instructions. What Jesus warns about in our passage today are the scribes, the religious people. They loved to have special clothes, big long flowing robes. They loved special titles and greetings. They were probably the sort of people that would have liked to have been known as the reverend, or the not so reverend, or the irreverend, or the very, very most reverend, or whatever. They loved the special seats and all of the respect that went their way. You know, for me, the truth is I try and avoid those sorts of things. It's not because I don't like them, it's because I'm fearful that I'd like them a bit too much. So Jesus says, be very wary of those that do like that kind of stuff. They can often be fake and frauds, and in fact, worse than that, they can often get up to all sorts of spiritual abuse in the way in which they treat the widows and just rip them off for their own benefits. So we need to be on our guard that such types of clergy and religious leaders will be about. Jesus was aware of them, and sadly they are still very much around today, and we are to beware of them. Father, thank you for this warning about all of us and our own hearts, and how we can so need to be stroked and made to feel good about ourselves, acknowledged for what we do. Please save us from that. May we love you first, love other people second, and ourselves last, as we take up the way of the cross and follow Jesus, his way. Amen.